coming to us and being of service tonight. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
My phone is jumping over. My phone is jumping around a little bit, so I'm not quite sure if I understand everything that it's doing, but I think I'll be able to make this work. My name is David. I'm alcoholic, and just in a little bit of an introductory comment. I came to you, I guess, via a suggestion of David Russell, who's on the call tonight, or was on the call. I know him a long time. And I'm not a hell of a humorous kind of a speaker. There might be a couple of chuckles along the way, but I'm not the real circuit speaker type or anything like that. I'm not a third legacy guy. I've done a tremendous amount of service for in Alcoholics Anonymous, but they're kind of grassroots service commitments. I've never been a GSR or anything like that, or area delegate, or I'm not one of those guys. So what you're going to hear is kind of one-on-one deal as I had it passed to me, and that's the way I pass it along. So my sobriety date is February 17th, 1984. If I make it another few weeks, I'll be celebrating 40 years, and we celebrate in White Plains in Sponsor House. There are 5 or 6 different groups that occupy the premises, and there's probably going to be, maybe 25 or 30 celebrants that day. They put out a big spread and they cater it. It's really nice. And I'll also be asked to celebrate at Riverdale in the Bronx. And then we go up to meetings in Dingman's Ferry, Pennsylvania, which is in the Pocono Mountains. And we go to a meeting there Saturday mornings at 7 a.m. And I know they're going to want to celebrate me there in February also. And I was brought up in an AA where you get a home group and you only celebrate in one group. But you know what happens if you don't drink and you don't die? You kind of get to be an old timer, and AA likes to celebrate their old timers, the guys that have longevity and sobriety. And some of the sharp edges have come off of my sobriety that I had early on. I was very regimented in the type of a group that did things by a strict group conscience, and I would never have strayed from the group conscience, and I lived that way in AA for a long time. But the last few years, I definitely have mellowed. I've come across some health issues which have also got me into touch with my mortality, and that'll get you humble. Let me tell you what, when you can't breathe, that'll get you real humble, real quick. I have a good team of doctors that are taking care of me now, and I've been making some improvement in that regard. I mean, diagnosis-wise, they call it respiratory heart failure, and we're gonna see what we can do with it. Now, I was born and raised on a small farm in the Midwest, and I heard somebody say that you guys are near Gulfport, Mississippi. My dad was a Navy guy, and he did his training in Gulfport, Mississippi, in the naval yards there, or naval academy there. I'm not quite sure exactly what's there, but I know that Gulfport is a naval town. And all of his buddies were World War II veterans and salt of the earth guys, blue collar, hard working guys, whether they were stonemasons or worked in the steel mills or auto wreckers, or these kind of guys. One guy owned a hardware store. They were salt of the earth type of guys. And a lot of my original value system got installed back there, and some of it was no damn good. I'll be honest with you. Some of the old ideas that we talk about, I discovered there, or they were implanted there, and I carried them with me. I truly loved those war stories. I mean, World War II war heroes. I couldn't get enough. These guys were men's men, and pick yourself up by the bootstraps kind of guys, and the whole value system that goes along with it. Now, needless to say, there were some hard drinkers there, including my dad. My dad, who never made it to the rooms. Met his demise in a barroom brawl in Des Moines, Iowa, and froze to death in the snow. And that brought me to New York. He had met my mom in the Brooklyn Navy Yards during the war when they commissioned the Bonhomme Richard, which is the aircraft carrier he was on, and he served in the Pacific Theater. And then after the war, he grabbed my mom from Brooklyn and brought her out to the Midwest, and like I say, I was born and raised there, and had a lot of my values installed in me there. And as a 10-year-old, I came back to New York. My mother brought us back. Pretty much, she feared for her safety and ours, to be honest with you. As my dad's drinking escalated, he became more and more violent, and he was a guy you didn't want to tangle with when he was drinking. He was dangerous. Anyway, without a dad around, my mom was working, morning, noon, and night, and there were 5 kids, and we were more or less a litter, and we were roaming the streets of Brooklyn, New York. I was different. I didn't like shoes. I liked to run around barefoot. I had a Midwestern twang. And I really did not fit into. I'd never seen anything like New York City. I never even dreamed of seeing anything like New York City. When we came over to George Washington Bridge for the first time, and I saw the Empire State Building and these things, and oh my God! It was culture shock galore. And immediately I was put into grade school, and I was different. And, they would say things like, how do you spell refrigerator? And I could spell refrigerator, but I didn't know what a refrigerator was because we never had one. We had an ice box. But I was smart enough to spell it, but I didn't know what it was. And they all laughed, and, I stuck out like a sore thumb, and that was okay. And I guess I got over it, but it was definitely a different breed than these kids that were from Brooklyn. And, from there, it was not long before I started really smoking cigarettes and getting in trouble. I had tasted my dad's wine when I was a kid, knee high to a grasshopper. And I'd sit around the table with my dad's buddies and listen to these stories, especially on Friday nights when they play cards and start drinking around the table. And I'd listen to those stories, and oh my God, how I worshiped those guys. They were my heroes. And one New Year's Eve, I think I was 7 years old. I had a BB gun, and my dad got me a .22, and we would go out and shoot squirrels and rabbits and stuff like that. But on this particular New Year's Eve, I was about 7 years old, or 7.5 years old. And my dad and his buddies were playing cards and drinking on New Year's Eve, and they thought it was a good idea for me to ring the New Year's in by shooting a shotgun in the air. And, I was like, oh, yeah, that's going to be great. I'm going to be one of the boys. My rite of passage here, And midnight came out, and then I took that shotgun, and I put it under my armpit, and I put it up in the air, and I let it go. I'd seen a shotgun fired, but I'd never fired one. And when I fired it, it knocked me flat on my ass. And they laughed. They were laughing at me, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that in front of those guys. I didn't like them. I didn't like being embarrassed, and I didn't like them looking at me in that light. And I went back inside, and I had already had a cigarette. My dad had let me smoke a cigarette, and he let me have some sips on a wine bottle. And I went back inside, and I remember as clear as if it was yesterday, I lit up another Lucky Strike, and I sat down at that table, and I threw back a good finger or two of that wine. And I threw up all over the table. And as I look back on my drinking and my alcoholism and the diseases, I understand it. If there was an imaginary line to cross, I crossed it that night, because I drank to be accepted. I wanted to be one of the guys. I immediately got in trouble with booze, and I blamed the shotgun. And that's how my life went. I could give you a case-by-case history of everything that happened to me from that day forward till I came into AA when I was 34 years old. And in every case, you can almost look at it, and they're almost exactly the same. I drank to be accepted and be one of the boys. I got in trouble, and I blamed something or somebody else. I never blamed the alcohol. Along the way, I got to tell you, I engaged in a lot of non-conference approved substances to a large degree. At the final analysis, I was in a heap of trouble legally, had been arrested and convicted on some felony charges, and was facing a lot of jail time. But I cut a deal. I had to turn some state's evidence. I didn't snitch, but I had to turn some state's evidence over. And I got on a what they used to call a shock probation program, but I was on 5 years parole. And I had to go to my parole officer every week. And he immediately wanted me to get on this habit, this regiment of rolling my sleeves up. And so I knew that, I was in a real pickle. So I started to drink more and more and more. Safe, it was legal. They didn't tell me I couldn't drink on parole. I wouldn't violate. And I started drinking 90 proof Smirnoff vodka. It seemed to do the trick. It seemed to quiet the noise and put the problem to sleep that was swirling around inside of my guts. And at least for a little while, it put it to sleep. I steady started to get more frequent blackouts and real, wild behavior and trouble just seemed to. I wasn't violating parole, but I could see this was not going to be good. I was eventually going to wind up facing those charges of violating, and the sentence was 15 years to life on 2 different counts. And I was scared. I really was scared, and I was drinking a lot, and I forgot to go home, and I had a real attitude. I got hooked up with a room behind a deli where it was honor among thieves. I was paying a weekly rate, and you couldn't lock the door to any of these rooms. Nobody put a lock on their door, because if you put a lock on the door, that meant you had something valuable inside your room. If you had something valuable inside your room, they would break down your door while you were away and take whatever you had. So you just didn't lock the door, and you didn't have anything valuable. And I don't know. I made a false start in AA. I really was under a tremendous pressure to this legal thing was really, bugging me. And I really, people have been trying to fix me for years, but I've been to therapeutic environments galore. I mean, I spent 28 months in a drug rehab. I mean, I counseling, and, I was in Creedmoor State Hospital strapped in an I Love Me jacket, and the flight deck. And yeah, I mean, people have been trying to fix me for a long time. But I wandered into Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was almost on a dare. And there were immediately, I was surrounded by a bunch of very large guys. I mean, these guys were huge guys. I don't know if it was the greeting committee or who they were, but they were big guys. I mean, they were all clocking in at 6'2", 6'3", and 225 and 300 pounds, big guys. And they surrounded me, and they give me the AA. They give me the AA rundown from that group. It was one of these groups where you join the group, you get a sponsor in the group, you go to 90 meetings in 90 days. You go to all the home group meetings, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night. The nights that we don't meet, you go on outgoing meetings. The outgoing meetings meet in the church parking lot, and they all usually have more than one. One leaves at 5:30, one leaves at 6:30, and on many times you'd have one that would leave at 6:30 and 7:30. So there was no excuse why you couldn't be on the outgoing meeting. And in that group, you didn't have to drink. You know, it was men with men, women with women. Get in the car. Don't think. Your brain is broken. If you want an opinion, we'll give you one. Don't offer us any money for gas. We're not interested in that. Don't give us directions on how to get to the place because you don't know anything. If you want an opinion, we'll give you one. And, it was kind of like that. And it was a drill. And I'll tell you what, under normal circumstances, I wouldn't take that shit from anybody. But for some reason, I guess the heat was on. And I didn't want to stick out as the guy that was the defiant one in the group. So I complied. I did what they wanted me to do. And it wasn't easy. I didn't live near the group, and I had to take trains and hitch rides and hitchhike and, beg people to drive me. I lost my car, and then I had a car that didn't run, and I was in a hell of a shape. And, needless to say, I came across David Russell in that group, and he was hell. He's real mellow now. You might not think so, but I'm here to tell you he's mellow now. You should have known him then. But anyway, I went to a meeting every day for the first 5 years of my sobriety. I had a sponsor named Gene. He actually had to make me stop going. One night, my daughter had injured herself, and I had to take her to the emergency room to have her lip and her upper gums sewn back together. And my sponsor told me to stay home with my daughter. And I said, no, I'll go to a meeting. He said, no, you stay home with your daughter tonight. And I argued with him. But eventually I complied, and I stayed home. That was the first time I missed a meeting in 5 years. And look, in that first 5 years, I stayed sober initially by listening to tapes. I found out that it's very difficult to think about drinking while you're listening to Charlie and Joe. The two things just don't fit into my brain at the same time. And so I listened to Sandy Beach and Charlie and Joe and Bob Bazans, and I listened to Clancy, and I listened to Johnny Harris, and I listened, and the guy that the church where we met, the preacher there was also in AA, and he had he used to tape his sermons, and he would tape his sermons and give a distribution book. And he had a high-speed dubbing machine, so that when you were leaving the church after the service, you could already get a copy of his service of that service that he spoke that day. And he allowed us to use his high-speed dubbing machine to make copies of tapes. And I would make copies of tapes and hand them out to people all over the place. And I was eventually we got a committee together. I was not on the committee, but there was a committee of guys from Mamaroneck and Mount Kisco that got Charlie and Joe to come to New York, and we met them. And at that time, I was a volunteer at Stepping Stones, the home of Bill and Lois Wilson. Commitment that I had for 15 years. I was a tour guide there. But when Charlie and Joe came, Lois was still alive, and I was not a tour guide. I was just a volunteer. I was raking the yard and throwing out the garbage and cleaning out the leaders and gutters and, helping her straighten out the weeds in the garden, and just a volunteer. And Charlie and Joe wanted to see Stepping Stones, so I called the guy that I worked for up there, and I said, hey, listen, I'm here at this seminar in Marymount, at Marymount, and I got these guys here that are giving this seminar. Their name's Charlie and Joe, and they want to see Stepping Stones. You think I could bring them up there? And he said, Charlie and Joe? Charlie and Joe, the guys from the tapes, Charlie and Joe? I said, yeah, I'm having lunch with them right now. They asked me if they could come up to Stepping Stones. And he said, sure, bring them up on Sunday when you guys are done. So we got a caravan going after the seminar. It was a 3-day seminar, and we went up to Stepping Stones with Charlie and Joe. And when I got up there, up the driveway with them, we caravanned them up there. There was a bunch of people up there. And I got out of the car with Charlie and Joe, and something happened. I put a merit badge on my chest. I puffed up myself, and I became a hero in AA. I went from zero to hero. I brought Charlie and Joe to Stepping Stones. And we've been doing Charlie and Joe style meetings ever since. We started a meeting that was, based on their big book study concept. It was called Keep It Green. We ran it for a bunch of years, and it ran its cycle. And then we started another group, and it was called 103, and then there was another one called Pathway to Power. The current group that I'm in White Plains is called The Missing Link, and we have our big book study meeting on Monday nights. And I was very fortunate to learn about real or perceived threats to my instincts for sex, security, and self-esteem, because I didn't learn that in my home group. That's not what they were teaching in my home group. They told you to write your life story and tra-la-la off to, middle of the road sobriety with the girls and coffee and, dance parties. But that's not what happened with me. I was exposed to Charlie and Joe really through David Russell. He was the guy that first got me the tapes. And it's really been, that kind of a deal ever since. We've done a lot of things in Alcoholics Anonymous, looking to create new ideas and new ways of presenting this gift, and we try to switch it up. And we've done a workshop called The Bridge, which is designed to take people up to the 5th step in a day, and you can get people that are highly motivated in AA, and they can swallow a package like that if it's presented properly. And I don't know if they always follow through, but if they're attentive, they can certainly grasp the ideas that we're talking about. We've done one called Is it History or Mystery? We've studied a lot in the history of us, and we found out a lot of the really strange coincidences that have taken place, and these peculiarities seem like, they're kind of custom made. They fit us real well. I don't know. I mean, just a quick example. We know that there was a big controversy in early AA of God as you understand them, and versus the Oxford group principles of first century Christianity, and there was big arguments about it in early AA, and two of the principal guys that were arguing about it were they were hell with each other, and it was a tremendous controversy. And we come to find out that, they're buried next to each other in Maryland somewhere. Ain't that funny? So anyway, I was a volunteer at Stepping Stones, and Lois died in '88, and the foundation was started, and they decided they were going to give tours, and they didn't know who was going to give the tours, so they both turned around and looked at me, and they said, let him give the tours. So I started giving the tours at Stepping Stones, and I've been able to, I still do tours at Stepping Stones occasionally. I haven't done them on a regular basis now for a number of years, but every once in a while we'll get a special request from somebody or a group, and I'll go up there and put my 2 cents in. But there was a great experience to meet people from all over the world that would come to Stepping Stones, that wanted to see, you know, the legacy left by Lois of Alcoholics Anonymous that she created on her balcony. Tremendous visual legacy of the things that she thought were most pertinent and important. And I did that for 15 years, and I wandered up to East Dorset, Vermont, to do a Charlie and Joe seminar. And it wasn't Charlie and Joe. It was 2 guys from Long Island who had become disciples of Charlie and Joe, and they were doing a weekend seminar. So I went up there and met Ozzy and Dean and Bonnie. They were the ones who were running it at the time that they were resurrecting it. It was in disrepair. And they had also started a foundation up there. And, you know, I talked to them, and they found out that, you know, I had been doing the tours at Stepping Stones. And they said, you know, you could help us out because we have our pilgrimage meeting in June every year. And we've been doing it, but we like the keynote speaker to be someone who actually knew Bill. And, you know, we're having a hard time. We're running out of people that knew Bill just because of the passage of time. I mean, they said, you know a lot of people that knew Bill. I said, well, I know some people that knew Bill because of my experience at Stepping Stones. I said, yeah, I'll see what I could do. So for about 10 or 12 years, I brought the keynote speaker up to the Wilson House on the first weekend in June. And I brought a good friend of David's up there, a guy named Scotty. I'm not sure if Scotty was ever David's sponsor, but Scotty was very instrumental in AA. I say early AA. I'm talking about the late 60s. That precedes my experience in AA, but I think there were guys around who were really trying to do a good job of carrying a message, and this guy Scotty was in that bunch, and I was able to have now Bonnie and Dean and Ozzy. They're all gone. The ones who, you know, resurrected Bill Wilson's house have all since passed away, and there's a new bunch of people up there. And you know, we carry on. We have our big book studies. We look for new guys. There's a new guy on the meeting tonight who's been kind of bouncing in and out for a while, and you know, we'd love for him to, you know, really get with what we do and stick with us. You know, I talk to the same guys about sex security, real or perceived threats to my sex security and self-esteem all the time. I got a guy named Eddie. I got a guy named Bob, and there's a couple other guys that are around, and they know the deal. They understand, you know, this thing of checking yourself for real or perceived threats for your instincts for sex security and self-esteem. It's a lifetime deal. I mean, it don't take me long to get out there and get threatened. And if I stuff it and I don't share about it or take a corrective measure, and another instinct gets threatened without me correcting the first one, and now I got 2 at the same time stacking up, I can get in a hell of a mess real quick. And guess what? My mouth will get me in trouble. I'm going to be 40 years sober, and it doesn't make a damn bit of difference if I don't stay tucked in and watch my inventory very carefully on an ongoing basis, daily, And it's not a grind. It's a pleasure. I love taking my inventory, and I take other people's inventory too. I'll admit it. I mean, but it's a pleasure. It's really, it's a skill. It's a spiritual skill. It's a pleasure to be able to show somebody what it is we do, and they can do it too, and carry this message to, the next new guy or the next new gal. I still do men with men and women with women. I don't try to sponsor women. I know there are people around who do it, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to fit real well with me. When you get down to the inventories and you want to start talking about columns and resentments and fears and harms to others, there's some sexual goodies in there that really, I think that it's best men with men, women with women. I don't know. You guys give me an awful long time to talk here. I never really have carried on in a meeting for 45 minutes. I really feel like I've exhausted my effectiveness with you. I really don't want to violate your group conscience and quit early. But you know what? I'm going to quit. I think I've come to about the end of what my usefulness would be here. So I don't know if you want to continue or share or how you guys carry on when somebody doesn't finish the job right. But that's all I got for tonight. Thanks for listening.